Wine's fingers tighten around the edge of the file as the elevator doors slide open, revealing the pristine marble floors of John Corporations. The air was sharp, cold like the man who ruled this place. The steady sound of polished shoes echoed down the hallway before she even saw him. John Jungkook, her husband, her CEO, walked with that same unyielding poise, eyes focused, voice clipped, presence commanding. The employees straightened immediately, the air shifting as though the temperature had dropped. He stopped briefly beside her, gaze flicking to the file in her hands. "You are late." His tone wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of weight that made your throat tighten. "The report you requested wasn't final. I didn't want to submit it half." "Excuses?" He cut in, eyes unreadable. "In this company, I expect precision, not explanations." She bit the inside of her cheek, lowering her gaze around them. The whispers began, quite poisonous. "She's lucky he even talks to her. If I were her, I would quit already." They didn't know. They couldn't know. The woman they pitied was the only one shared his last name, who slept on the other side of his bed every night in silence. The morning meeting was held in the boardroom, walls made of glass and tension. One sat 2 seats away from him, trying not to notice how he didn't look her way even once. His voice dominated the room, calm, calculated, merciless. Even Eliana, his secretary, placed a cup of coffee beside him. He barely acknowledged it. But when she later returned with another, setting it in front of wine with a serene smile, wine froze. The aroma was unmistakable. Her favorite blend, 2 sugars, no cream, exactly how she liked it. "Thought you could use this, Mrs. Jones." Her voice dripped with politeness that didn't reach her eyes. Wine forced a smile, murmuring a quiet thank you, but she didn't miss the way Chunguk's gaze flickered briefly in her direction just once, just long enough to notice she hadn't taken a sip yet. That night, the mansion felt as empty as ever. Expensive silence filled every corner, polished marble, perfect chandeliers, and the sound of nothing. He sat in his study, sleeves rolled up, pen gliding over documents. The glow from his desk lamp cast sharp lines across his jaw, making him look even more distant, a man sculpted by control. Wine lingered by the door, hesitant. "You didn't eat dinner?" He didn't look up. "Neither did you." Her brows furrowed. "I was waiting for you." A pause. The pen stopped moving, but he didn't meet her eyes. "You don't have to." It wasn't cruel, it was simply final, like everything he said. "You treat me like I'm one of your employees." That made him finally look up. His gaze was dark, unreadable, and for a heartbeat she thought she saw something in his eyes, something raw. "Would you prefer I treat you like my wife?" The air thickened, her lips parted, but no words came. He looked away first, closing the file on his desk. "Sleep, Wine. You have a long day tomorrow." He didn't notice, or maybe he did, that she stood there for another moment, hoping for something softer, a flicker of warmth, a sign that the man she had married wasn't all eyes, but all she heard was the quiet rustle of papers and the soft hum of the night. Every morning was the same, her car already running when she stepped outside, her coffee waiting on her desk before she arrived, her reports mysteriously reviewed and corrected before deadlines. No one knew who did it, but she did. He never said it aloud, never admitted that behind that wall of indifference he cared in ways that words could never explain. Everyone at the office whispered that Jungkook didn't like her, that she was just a formality in his perfect polished world, but she knew better because sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, she caught him watching her, not with affection but with restraint, as if loving her was the one mistake he couldn't afford to make. The conference room was alive with murmurs, the faint clatter of pens and glass cups filling the air. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the June Tower boardroom, catching the sleek silver of Jungkook's wristwatch as he scrolled through his phone in silence. Wine stood before the massive screen, her heart pounding against her ribs. This was at the presentation she had worked on for months, perfecting every slide. Every data point, her fingers trembled slightly as she clicked the remote, the first slide glowing behind her. Good morning, everyone. Today, I'll be presenting the full launch strategy for the Ethereal Line campaign. Our aim is to. The screen flickered. Then, to her horror, slide that appeared next was wrong. Outdated designs, incomplete figures, the earliest prototype of her idea months old and discarded. Confusion rippled through the room, then came the whispers, this can be it, can it? Those matrices are from the old forgot. Did you really submit this to the CEO? Her breath hitched, her pulse thundered. She quickly tried to pull up her backup file, but it wasn't there. Replaced, gone. This seems to be a mistake. This isn't laughter, low and stifled, but enough to make her throat close up. At the head of the table, Chukuk sat with his usual stillness, legs crossed, gaze fixed on the screen. His expression revealed nothing, no anger, no confusion, just eyes. Ilyana, standing nearby with her tablet, leaned slightly forward, pretending concern. Maybe Mrs. Jones submitted the wrong version, sir. These things happen when one isn't careful. Her voice was silk wrapped around a dagger. The humiliation burned, one could feel every eye on her. The pity, the mockery, the whispers crawling beneath her skin. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. No, this isn't the file. I updated it 3 nights ago and I submitted it to your office, Ilyana. Just a flicker crossed Ilyana's face, but she quickly masked it with a polite smile. That's strange, I never received it. Wine's fists clenched by her side. The unfairness of it made her eyes sting, but she refused to cry. Not here, not in front of him. She met Jungkook's gaze at last, silently begging him to believe her. He didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't move. Then, after what felt like forever, his deep voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. Who authorized this version of the file? The room went deadly silent. His tone wasn't loud, it wasn't need to be. Each word was deliberate, calm. Later, no one dared to speak. Wine could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the faint tremor in her own breath. Ilyana swallowed hard, stepping forward with a practiced innocence. Sir, I assume this was the latest variant. It was in the shared folder labeled final draft. Jungkook slowly leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. So you're telling me you didn't check before distributing it to the board? Ilyana's smile faltered. Sir, or perhaps you didn't want to check. The shift in his voice was so subtle yet so sharp it made everyone freeze. He reached for the tablet beside him, her tablet, the one Ilyana used for every meeting. Within seconds, his long fingers scrolled, and then he turned the screen around. It was the correct presentation file, time-stamped, clearly marked with Vine's initials, sent directly to Ilyana's inbox 3 days ago. A collective gasp filled the room. Jungkook placed the tablet down slowly, his gaze slicing through the silence. Next time you attempt to discredit my employees. His eyes flickered briefly to Wine. Make sure you are competent enough to hide your tracks. Ileana's face trained off colors, her lips parted, but no sound came out. The meeting adjourned in suffocating silence. Executives hurried to gather their things, pretending not to look at Wine as they left. Jungkook stood straightening his tie with quiet precision. He didn't look at her. Didn't say a single word, just walked past her. His scent faint, sadder, and something darker brushing against her as he left. She stood there alone, staring at the flickering screen, her heart torn between gratitude and ache. He had defended her, destroyed Ilyana's facade with surgical precision, but then left her like she didn't matter. Not a glance, not a word, just that cold, distant silence. Later that night, one sat at her desk, her mind still heavy with the humiliation that refused to fade. The mansion was quiet as always. Her phone buzzed. A notification from Jungkook. Subject Rubians. She opened it hesitantly and froze. Attached was her real project sent to the international investors. Polished, presented, perfect under his corporate email. But at the end of the report, her name was there. Project lead, Wine Joan. Her throat tightened. She stared at the screen until her vision blurred. He didn't need to say anything, he never did, because this quiet, unseen restraint was how Chungu cared. Not through words, not through comfort, but through silent protection from the shadows of his own cold heart. The night pressed down heavy and silent, the kind of silence that carried unspoken things, anger, pain, longing. The mansion felt like a cathedral of emptiness, every corner echoing with things left unsaid. Wine stood by the window, watching the city lights blur beyond the glass. The humiliation of that morning still stung beneath her ribs. She could still hear the laughter, the pity, the way Jungkook had walked right past her as if she were invisible. And yet he had saved her, quietly, efficiently, without a word. It was the duality of him that hurt most, the man who shielded her in shadows but froze her in his light. The sound of his footsteps made her turn. He had just returned from his study, childhood expression unreadable. He could have at least said something. He paused mid-step, his eyes lifting slowly to meet hers. About what? Wine's voice wavered with restrained emotion. About what happened today, about how everyone laughed, how I stood there alone while you. While I handled it, he interrupted smoothly, tone cool and controlled. She stared at him, her twisting. Handle it, you humiliated her, Jungkook, but you left me feeling like I didn't even exist. Like I was just some employee you were obligated to protect. For the first time, his composure flickered barely, a small tightening of his jaw, a slow exhale. Would you rather I comforted you in front of them? I would rather you acted like you cared. Her words cut through the air, sharp, trembling, real. He stepped closer. The faint smell of his cooling cider and smoke wrapping around her, his voice dropped low. Why do you think I do any of this wine? She blinked. Do what? Keep my distance, hold my silence. Because if I don't, his voice broke just slightly, I'll forget what control feels like. She stared at him, stunned. Beneath that quiet voice, there was something fractured, something dangerous, like a man constantly fighting himself. Control over what? She whispered. Jungkook's eyes darkened. You. The confession hit like a blow. He didn't mean it cruelly. It sounded like a man confessing to a sin he couldn't stop committing. He looked away as if disgusted with himself. Go to bed, whined, but she didn't move. She stood there, silent tears burning her eyes as he walked away. His back stiff, his control shattering in ways he had never admitted, because that was who Jungkook was, a man who protected with his hands but destroyed with his silence. The next morning brought chaos. White barely stepped into the office when murmurs erupted around her. Screens flickered with her name, her face plastered across internal emails and forums. Confidential photos of her project, drafts that had been leaked, along with a message. Mrs. Jones accused of data theft, company reputation at risk. Her heart dropped, the color drained from her face. Employees avoided her eyes as she walked down the hall. The whispers returned sharper this time, dripping venom. Did she really steal it? Wouldn't be the first time someone used the CEO's name to climb up. And then she saw her. Liana, perfectly composed, standing near the boardroom entrance with false concern etched into her face. One, I didn't want to believe it either, but the files came from your login credentials. Once voice cracked, you did this, you planted them. Ilyana's smile barely shifted. Prove it. Before Ryan could respond, the doors behind them opened. The sound of Jungkook's footsteps silenced the room. He entered like a storm in a black suit, every line of his body rigid with fury, his eyes locked on Ilyana, and the temperature of the entire room seemed to drop. My office now. The command was so sharp no one dared move. Ilyana followed him in, her confident stride faltering. The door closed behind them. Through the glass walls everyone could see through, they couldn't hear the CEO's composure begin to crack. His voice wasn't calm this time, his gestures sharp, his expression unrestrained anger. Moments later, the door opened again. Ilyana stumbled out, her face pale, eyes glassy. Jungkook's voice followed, low but deadly clear. Effective immediately, you are dismissed. I don't tolerate snakes in my company. No one had ever seen him like that cold, yes, but never furious, never emotional, never protective. He turned to the board members who had gathered in confusion. If anyone here dares question Mrs. Jones' integrity again, they can hand in their resignations with hers. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. One stood frozen, heart pounding, as his gaze finally met hers through the glass. For once, she didn't see coldness. She saw something raw, something that looked a lot like fear, not of her, but of what he had just revealed to the world later. When the building emptied, Wine found him alone in his office, leaning against his desk, had bowed hands pressed to his temples. She stepped closer quietly. You didn't have to do that. He didn't look up. Yes, I did. They will question your decision. Let them. He finally raised his head, eyes dark, voice shaking slightly. I can rebuild a company one, but if I lost you, he stopped himself, swallowing hard. That's something I couldn't fix. Her heart clenched at the quiet desperation beneath those words. You're scared of loving me, or not you? He looked at her, then really looked, and the silence that followed was louder than any confession. Because she was right, he wasn't gold. He was terrified, terrified of how deeply he already did. The night was heavy with the scent of rain. It had been hours since the confrontation in the office, but Wine still couldn't shake the memory of Chunguk's eyes, dark, stormy, and guarded for the first time. The mansion was quiet again, too quiet. The air between them hummed with the weight of everything and sad. She found him standing in the living room, back to her, one hand resting on the edge of the glass wall that overlooked the city. The dim light from the street lamps painted sharp lines across the file. Jaw tense, veins prominent, eyes distant. One took a careful step forward. You can stop pretending now, Jungkook. He didn't move. You say nothing, do nothing, act like I don't matter, and yet every time I fall, you are the one who catches me. Why? He finally turned the movement slow, deliberate. His gaze met hers, cold, conflicted, unbearably raw. You think I don't care? His voice was quiet, roughened by something she had never heard before vulnerability. I have built entire walls around you, Wine, not to keep you out. He stepped closer, each word heavier than the last, but to stop myself from falling deeper. Her heart twisted. Then why fight it? He let out a low, humorless laugh. Because every time I care about something, I ruin it. People, relationships, promises, everything I touch ends up broken. You were supposed to be safe from me. You don't get to decide what hurts me, Jungkook. Her voice trembled but didn't break. You already do. For a moment, silence, then he reached for her fingers, brushing her wrist, hesitant, almost trembling. It was the first real touch that didn't feel forced or restrained, the kind of touch that said, I'm done pretending. But before either could speak again, a sharp sound shattered the moment her phone vibrating on the table. Screen lighting up with a flood of notifications. Her eyes widened. The company's official page was trending. Leaked photos, confidential documents, her name attached again. Jungkook's calm vanished in an instant. He snatched the phone, scanning the message, jaw clenching. She couldn't have done this alone. Ilyana, he nodded slowly, voice like steel. She's working with someone, a competitor. I warned them once. He grabbed his coat, the transformation immediate, the silence distant, CEO replaced by something darker, more dangerous. Wine reached for him. Jungkook, stop, you can't just go after them. He turned to her, eyes glinting with a mix of worry and fear. You think I'll stand here while someone tries to destroy you? The room felt smaller, suddenly his presence overwhelming, a storm ready to break. You don't even say you love me, but you will go to war for me. He stopped, the words hung between them like lightning. Then he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous murmur. Love isn't something I say whine, it's something I protect. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed a call from his security team. His expression darkened. They have tracked the leak to someone inside our network. She's not alone. He looked back at her, something fires flickering behind his control, fear, anger, devotion, all tangled together. Jungkook, he cupped her jaw, thumb brushing her cheek, the first open, gentle gesture in months. Stay inside no matter what happens. And if I don't? He leaned in his breath, ghosting her lips, soft, possessive, trembling with everything he couldn't say. Then you will see the side of me I have spent years burying. He turned toward the door, rain already starting to pour outside. Lightning illuminated his silhouette, tall, composed level. He paused at the threshold, his voice low and cold, laced with the promise that sent a chill through her spine. You wanted to see the real Jungkook? Fine. His eyes flicked back to her, gleaming under the stormlight. Then watch what happens when someone touches what's mine. And with that, he stepped out into the storm, the man everyone feared, but only she had ever truly seen.